Hello guys, my name is Ephraim here. So today I'll be doing a rendering test on my Intel Core i5-6402p Skylake processor. I'll be using a video editor software which is the Sony Movie Studio Platinum 64-bit, and I'll be rendering this video in various frame rates of video in 1080p and also in 4K. So all these clips are in 1 minute of length, so it's all equal in terms of length, so we actually have an idea how long it actually takes to render this video using the CPU. So now let's take a look at the system that I'll be using to render this video. So first of all, the processor is the Intel Core i5-6402p Skylake processor. The motherboard I'll be using is from Asus, it's the B150M Pro gaming motherboard, and the RAM is the 2 sticks of DDR4 Ram by Geil Evo X, and the graphics card is from Gigabyte. It's the GTX 1050 G1 gaming with 2 GB of RAM. And I'll be using is the SSD as my boot drive, which I'll be installing my operating system Windows 10 on it for actually faster performance. And for additional storage, I'll be using is the Western Digital 1TB blue hard disk. So without further ado, let's take a look at the results of my rendering test. Do take note that all these rendering tests are only rendered using the CPU only, as Sony Movie Studio Platinum 13 does not support GPU rendering in newer graphics card. So I'll be just using CPU only, but without even with other editor as well, most of the time CPU plays a big role in rendering the videos. So let's take a look at the time that it took to render the video. So first of all is the 1080p 24 frames per second video that I rendered out at 16 megabits per second. It just took me under a minute to render. It took me 59 seconds to render a 1 minute clip. So do take note that this clip is one clip by itself. So if you are making cuts in between and you are adding color correction or maybe doing some effects or adding some filters on it, the time may be slightly longer than 59 seconds, but this is just one whole clip, so it only takes 59 seconds. So moving on to the 1080p at 25 frames per second, as you can see now it took longer. It took 1 minute and 10 seconds. So the next is the 1080p at 50 frames per second. It took me 1 minute and 46 seconds to render. So on the last 1080p is the 60 frames per second, which took me 2 minutes and 8 seconds to render. So this on a Core i5 to render 1080p video, it actually performs really well. If you're rendering a 10-minute video, it can take somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes depending on your frame rates and your codec. But if you're rendering 60 frames per second, you can expect about 2 times the time you would take. If it's like 10 minutes of your video, then it will take about 20 minutes to render. For, in my opinion, it's pretty good for a Core i5 PC. So next we will be looking at the 4K. So in my test, I did this 4K just to try it out and to see how long it takes to render a 4K video. So the first one, I rendered a 4K 30 frames per second to 1080p. So as you can see, it only took me 1 minute and 39 seconds. From 4K, I downscaled it to 1080p. So you ask me why am I doing this, is to actually maintain the lot of resolution. So if you're shooting in 4K but you want to keep the file size small, so downscaling to 1080p at 30 frames per second actually that keeps the quality better. So if you're shooting native 1080p and you compare the video that is shot on 4K 30 frames per second and downscale it to 1080p, the quality is actually better. So if you're planning to do this, it's awesome. So next I'll be render out natively at 4K, which I'll be using 4K 30 frames per second. I rendered out same as previously at 50 megabits per second. This time it's at 50 megabits per second because it's a native 4K on the XAVC-S format. So the extension is going to be .mp4. So now it took me about 5 minutes and 43 seconds. So in this system, it actually take very long time to actually render a 4K video. So in my case, that if you are planning to get a PC or CPU to render 4K video, I will highly recommend you to get a Core i7-6700, that it will actually yield better result because it has 4 cores and 4 threads, which means you have actually 8 cores in total. So it's actually very much faster than this Core i5, which only has 4 physical cores and without hyper threading. But for the price you are paying, and if you just want to render video, and even if it's for gaming, this Core i5-6402 is an excellent choice. So if I will recommend you to go with all the i5 models, the 6400, the 6500, the 6600, or even the 6600K if you are planning to overclocking, as the 6600K is the most powerful processor among all the Core i5, which is actually really fast if you are planning to going for overclocking. But in terms of if you want to get any possible processor, I would recommend any i5, depending on your budget, also depending on where you live, because depending on the country, some country the 6500 model is almost $30 cheaper than the 6400, and so on. So sometimes the 6500 is it's a mistake there. The 6500 sometimes is a little bit more expensive than the 6400 by about $20. So if it's just $20, then I recommend you to get the 6500. But in my case, it's the 6402p, which means it's the slightly higher end than the 6400, which means that the 6400 base clock is 2.7, turbo boost to 3.3 GHz, whereas on the P version, the turbo boost up to 3.4, and on the base it's also slightly faster by 100 MHz. But although on paper you can see that the i5-6500, which I'm going to show you a comparison here. Taking a look at the comparison, the i5-6402p is at 2.8 GHz, whereas on the i5-6500 is at 3.2 GHz on the base clock. And on paper it seems pretty fast, but most of the time when you're using it, it actually activates what you call the Intel Turbo Boost technology. So when it's on Turbo Boost, the i5-6402p will actually goes up to 3.4 GHz on single core and also dual core, and on the i5-6500 will go up to 3.6 GHz, but that's only on single core, and if on dual core, the i5-6500 will drop down to 3.5 GHz, and most of the time when you're doing intensive stuff, so it's actually pretty close. So but for the time I've tried out with video editing, which actually utilize 4 cores, and I run the task manager, and I realized that the i5-6402p in real world testing, it actually goes up to 3.9 GHz on 4 cores, and on the 6500 actually goes up to 3.26 GHz. As you can see, the difference now is actually pretty close if you are using it for video rendering, because it actually utilizes all 4 cores, and when turbo boost is on, the difference is very minimal. But for me, in my country, the difference between the 6402p and the 6500 is about $30 difference. So for me, going for the 6402p is a better choice. So for more information on how many cores it actually turbo boost, I will give you a link in the description below. It's on Wikipedia, and you can check it out on how many cores will actually turbo boost and what are the frequency like. So for me, I think that if you are planning to get an i5 just for video editing on a budget, and most of the time you're actually rendering 1080p video and not 4K video, I will highly recommend this processor, because it gives you a lot of processing power to render 1080p. And if you do not want to spend an extra $100 or more on an i7, so coupled with a decent GPU like the RX 460 or the GTX 1050, it will actually help out in a certain software like the Premiere Pro CC, and some newer editing software will actually support GPU acceleration. So if you are a person who loves color grading and you are colorist, then you might want to get a more powerful graphics card like the GTX 1060 with a 6GB version, which that will help you lots of it in color grading. So that's all from me for today, and if you have any question or if you have any suggestion of any videos that you plan to see from the PC that I've just gotten, my PC build here, so if you want to see some gaming review or you want to see some other tests, feel free to leave me a comment below and I will get back to you. So if you think this video is helpful, feel free to give me a thumbs up. That will really help me a lot. And if you love my videos and love my content, you can sure to be subscribed to this channel, and I'll be uploading videos very soon and often, and that will actually help me a lot. So I hope you have a great day ahead. Have a nice day, and I will see you guys soon. Goodbye and God bless you.